What ended your friendship with your oldest standing friend? Story 1. Dude got married to a woman that controls every aspect of his life. Literally have seen him once since the wedding, 4 years ago. Answer. Ended up with a lot of distance with a very close friend that way. It's sad, but honestly, he and his wife are both happy. As far as I know, we've talked less and less over the years, but I don't see any indicators that either of them aren't happy. They just like the dynamic of focusing on each other to the exclusion to everyone else. Personally, it doesn't sound healthy to me, and it's definitely not what I would want, but to each their own, I guess. Story 2. My best friend of 50 years unfriended me a couple years ago, and I have no idea why. Devastating, and I'm just getting over it. Story 3. She voted for Trump. Her reasons were absolutely shoot too. The irony is that she's a U.S. history teacher. Story 4. My now wife reached out to my friend about an upcoming party that he was hosting. She had not met him and was excited to meet him. She messaged him on Facebook to say how excited she was and what does she need to bring. He followed up and said, I don't talk to people that I have not met in real life on here, and I am leaving this weekend, so I don't have time to give you any information. She asked me what she did wrong. I said nothing. That was a weird response. I followed up with him about his response, but he wanted to have sit down to talk about it. I told him we could talk on the phone about the issue. Nothing happened. He stopped talking to me, only showed up to my father's funeral, and seemed weirded out to actually have to talk to me. Haven't spoken to him since. That was 2 years ago since my dad's funeral. Answer. I'd wager he's jealous of you. This sounds like my brother. He's never liked a woman I've been in a relationship with, including my wife, who is genuinely a sweetheart. Acts weird, angry, bitter, distant, etc. toward my SO and myself, and has always struggled to maintain romantic relationships. After a very long argument years and years ago, he broke down and admitted that he was deeply jealous of me. It surprised me, and I honestly thought that our relationship would improve after it. It didn't. We have barely said a word to each other in 12 years. It's amazing how one sharp response in a message can erase years of communication. Sometimes such moments act as a litmus test, showing how much a person actually values your comfort and your family. Story 5. Short version, he was supposed to be a groomsman and didn't show up to my wedding. Never apologized. Haven't talked to him since. Also still owes me $200 for his suit. Long version, I had asked him to be a groomsman almost 2 years before the wedding, and he said yes. Unfortunately, we had to push our wedding date back by about 6 months because of our recovery from a kidney transplant donation. When we set up the new date, I asked him again, as I knew that changing the date could mess with some people's schedule, and he once again said yes. But this time he asked me to not invite his ex, who was also a friend from college, due to a bad breakup. Still don't know who to believe. Since he was going to be a groomsman, I honored his wish and didn't invite her to the new date. When it came to the suits, we found it was cheaper to buy them from a suit shop we found in my city and have groomsmen get them tailored rather than getting rentals. So I asked all the guys, and they all liked the idea of buying the suits, since some of them never even owned a suit. So I bought all the suits, shipped them all out to the guys, and would have them all pay me back when I saw them at the wedding. Skip ahead to the night of rehearsal, and he sends me a text he wasn't going to make it that night because of something to do with a friend messing up his ticket or something. And I said, okay, as long as you can make it to the wedding tomorrow, it's fine. And that was the last thing I texted him and the last I ever heard from him. It's now been almost 9 years. Story 6. I'm an atheist, he's a Mormon. For the most part, we avoided talking about religion. Then the CLDS built a new temple in our city. My friend talked about hand-carved pews, silk rugs, Swarovski crystal chandeliers, and gold fittings. He said he'd love to show me around. I told him that when the church builds a hospital ward instead of a temple with that kind of money, I'd love to see it. He hasn't spoken to me since, and sadly, I can't say I miss him. Story 7. Voted Trump and started repeating the same long, old, and dumb talking points. I had more money when Trump was in office. That was Obama's programs and tax policy. You voted for Trump, who set the tax policy for Biden's term, which hurt you, so you voted for the guy who screwed you for taxes. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. That's how the flow of linear time works. I couldn't stand the stupidity coming from him when this was someone who earned a bachelor's with me at the same school. I had to cut it off because he had become too brain-rotted to socialize with anymore. Story 8. She told me I couldn't talk about my dad dying of cancer because it affected her mood, and she needed to be upbeat because she works with kids. There were so many other instances like that where she basically, and sometimes literally just said, I don't care about what you're going through. I need to take care of myself. You could say she wanted to be part of the village, but never wanted to be a villager. After that, I stopped talking to her in general, and she never talked to me either. So I thought it was a mutual ending of the friendship. Big mistake. She absolutely blew up at me, literally 3 days after my dad died, when I didn't personally invite her to the funeral and said I was being selfish for not thinking of her feelings and trauma. She's never lost someone to cancer. Her parents and all grandparents are still alive. I have no idea what trauma she was referring to. Story 9. She had a breast lump extracted and claimed 7 aggressive cancer cells were found. She proceeded to shave and scar her head, made everyone around her act like she was stage 4. Always a drama queen. I could not do it. She dropped me. All the better. 25-year friendship toasted. Story 10. Was a friend with her since the 70s, 51 years. She was always narcissistic but had had a horrific childhood, so I let a lot slide. As she aged, the narcissism got worse and she became eccentric and impossible to get along with. I finally broke off the friendship. I feel terrible about it because she is so alone now, as I had hung in there for her longer than anyone else did. The sad takeaway is that some people have no business having children as they fudge them up so badly. My friend spent most of her adult life in therapy, but it didn't help. Answer: friend like this too, grew up in a decrepit house, uncleaned litter boxes, pit bulls that shoot everywhere, mom on disability who couldn't be fudged to do anything. I would always let him hang out at my place, always paid for meals when I could, never judged him for his emotional dysregulation from his environment. Then he just got it in his head one day that me being better off than him meant I was his mortal enemy. I think it had something to do with him mainlining Hassan videos for 3 years straight during the pandemic, and it made him believe that anyone who had a stable upbringing, worked a normal job, and paid their taxes was a mortal enemy of the proletariat. Some people just handle inadequacy in weird ways. Story 11. They got married. I didn't like the new SO. I was immature and decided bailing was better than putting up with the awkwardness. Story 12. Moved in together near the end of our 20s. Best friends since middle school. Found out his mom did everything for him and he's a lazy POS. He was using weaponized incompetence to not shoot even his own dishes, and everything became my responsibility. The thing that ended it was when we had to move and he didn't help me at all in finding a place. And then during the moving process, he was dragging his feet, and then he no-showed the final day of moving. Went off on him and did not try to reconcile. Was an awkward year where he continued not to do anything himself, and when the lease ended, we split. He also did not help or clean after himself for the move-out, LOL. Story 13. That's what I want to know. We weren't the closest of friends, and there were periods when we didn't know anything about each other. Yet when we met again, it was as if no time had passed. We met when we were in middle school, around 12 years old, and we were friends for about 2 decades, only for him to stop responding to my messages one day. I asked him if I had said or done something to upset him, unlikely since we hadn't had any contact for months, but he didn't answer me. In the end, I told him I would leave him alone if that's what he wanted, but that he should at least explain the reason for his change in attitude. He didn't respond to that either. From that moment on, I cut off all communication. I've seen him on the street, but I keep walking. I'll always wonder what happened. Story 14. I've only had one friend break up. She was a bottomless well of need and helplessness. She was absolutely obsessed with a married man. She constantly switched jobs and tried on new personalities. She went on a major online vendetta to try to destroy the reputation of a man who broke up with her, and it really didn't sit right with me. Then on the day my father buried his mother, she blew up in my phone, asking me if I could ask my father to get her a job. I couldn't do it anymore. Maybe I could have been if she had showed the slightest genuine interest in my life, but she seemed to resent that I even had one. It broke my heart when we ended our friendship, but 7 years later I still breathe a sigh, a relief now and then. Story 15. Life. As you get older, those who were once close friends become distant. In middle and high school, I had a core group of 3 other friends. It was the 4 of us as besties. Then came college for 2 of us, and the other 2 to work, one working for the family business and the other in the trades. We all went in different directions. The proximity was simply not there anymore. We kept in contact, would occasionally meet up, but the times became less frequent. We continued to get older, 3 married and had children, 2 divorced, remarried. I remained single with no children, eventually marrying, but no children. I became more liberal. They became more conservative and religious. We all live in different parts of the country. Interests changed. Phone calls became texts during birthdays or holidays. Now I only keep in somewhat communication with one of them, who I've been friends with since a very young age. We are all in our 40s now. Different lives, different friends, different life goals. I would say if it isn't something drastic or sudden that changes friendships, it's lack of proximity and slowly drifting apart. Story 16. Longtime close friend went full MAGA, and after Trump lost, he insisted it was rigged, the truth will all come out, etc. He wouldn't accept my reasons for not voting for him and declared I was ruining the country. We have had no communication since then. Story 17. He was my best friend of 17 years. My mom died, and his exact words in an email a day or two later were, "Give me a call when you're over this, and we'll go for a beer." It's been 12 years, and I'm still not over it. I likely never will be, jerk. Story 18. Best friends since elementary school. We were there for each other when we needed it. When my dad got sick and passed, she could not go to his funeral because of work. Started to part a bit, but still were in constant communication. She got engaged, and her then-fiancé and his family were on the wealthier side. She started to hang more with his family. I get it. Having been in her life so long, expected to be more involved in her wedding since we had always talked about it for years even before she got engaged. She got his family as bridesmaids and matron of honor again. I get it. But then I find out that even some new coworkers at the job, she was only a few months in, were also bridesmaids. Of course, I did not go to her wedding and haven't spoken since. Watching a close friend turn into a complete stranger over time is a special kind of melancholy. It feels like you're missing a version of a friend who no longer exists, even though the person themselves is still around. Story 19. Cancer. I got it, and she was awful throughout my treatment and illness. It made me realize how one-sided our friendship had always been, and it centered around her needs and wants all the time. When it came time for her to step up and not have the focus on her for the first time in 25 years, she couldn't even pretend to be there. Illness and a passing in the family can and will change your contact list drastically. Story 20. Charlie Kirk's passing. I posted a Therapist Jeff video that addressed mostly LQBTQ POs to my story, and he responded, "This is FK Ed." I said, "What do you mean?" and never heard anything from him again. Story 21. Age and distance. We were friends since kindergarten. No big blow up, no animosity, just growing up. Once we hit adulthood and I moved and we went our separate ways. We don't know each other anymore. I see her lifestyle now, and then I see mine and realize that I am grateful I had her in my early years. But no, we wouldn't be friends if I met her later in life, due to all the life changes and change of interests. I loved how simple being friends as children was, and I'll always hold that close to me. Answer. Some friendships are definitely this way. Usually in early youth, my close friends from middle school and high school, I'm close with now decades later. But my best friend from kindergarten to 6th grade, although we keep in touch, we couldn't be more different, and her lifestyle is too much drama for my taste. I just have zero in common with her, so we still do the once every few year check-in, but she's not someone I would choose as a friend. But when you're kids, you can get along with almost anyone. Story 22. I'm gonna cheat a little. My absolute best friend, I've known for 20 years and we're still going strong. But my second oldest friend, our friendship ended after a decade when she got married and had kids. I was in her wedding. I have many good memories with her, as I hope she does of me, and I harbor no ill feelings. It makes me sad that it ended the way it did, but we just slowly drifted apart after she had her first baby. I tried to be mindful of all the ways to support her, keep in mind that her life was changing, still be there for her, etc. And I think she tried her best, but we just didn't have anything in common anymore. I was and am still single and childless. We couldn't relate to each other anymore. Contact and attempts to hang out just slowly trickled to a halt. I haven't spoken to her in over a year now. I hope she's well. Other friends who have had kids, I've managed to stay very close to, so I'm not sure what her and I's issue was, but such is life. Story 23. A lot of it is just growing apart, or maybe just not growing up. One friend wants to do all of the things we did in 1991 again. Yeah, I'm not going to be the awkward 50-something guy who sits at the mall for hours at a time. I'm also really not into house parties at this point in my life. I'm old. I don't like drinking as much as I used to, primarily because of the hangovers, but also the waste of money. And I think most of it is that he married and had kids young, so he never had his 20s to go out and socialize, and now he's trying to recapture the things that he remembers from high school and shortly after. He was always a friend who was an acquired taste, like either you liked him, you hung out around him, and eventually got to understand him, or just couldn't stand him. The few times that I did meet up with him over the last 10 years, the discussion was, when are you having kids? You should have kids. Why don't you adopt? We need to go out and party sometime. So you can see what he brings to the table, kids and partying, which if you want to brag about your kids, great. I don't have kids. That ship has sailed long ago. My interest on having kids is less than zero. And partying? I'm in my early 50s. I don't mind a beer after work on occasion or a weekend beer or two with friends or family, but the partying phase is long gone. Anything more than 3 beers and I start getting anxious and paranoid. LOL, that's not a good combo if you ask me. Speaking of drinking, I have another friend who likes to meet up for drinks. Again, I don't mind a drink or two on the weekends, but I can't do long day drinking sessions anymore. Like I physically just can't do it. While I'm also trying not to be a male body part, I also try to casually drop those hints in those discussions when the group text starts. So I more or less have been scheduling myself out of those day drinking sessions that are disguised as, let's meet up for lunch. Story 24. I got married. Then best friend was my MOH. She got falling down tipsy and had a big emotional meltdown at the reception. She was going through some big life changes at the time. So I thought that the issue and my only concern was that she was okay. Holed up in a guest room so the other guests didn't know or even notice she'd sort of just dipped out. Almost called an ambulance because I was so scared for her. But she begged me to just let her sober up and kept apologizing over and over for ruining the wedding. When I laughed at one point and told her that she didn't ruin anything, that I was just so glad she was there, and I was sorry she was having a bad time, she sort of got quiet and weird and just asked me to leave her alone for a while. My in-laws took turns making sure she was okay and had water and such. Long story short, after she got home, she ended up messaging to say she was done being in my life. Turned out she'd spent years harboring a fantasy that I, queer, attracted only to men and mask folks, very, very clear about this for as long as she had known me, would wake up one day having realized that actually I was really into girls, and in fact was very into her since we loved each other so much, and I'd leave my partner of then not quite a decade to run away with her to live our happy ever after. In her words, watching me literally glowing as I exchanged vows and happily kissed my husband shattered the dream. She didn't realize how big a thing it was for her until it happened, and then it was too much. It was messy and awful. Friendship is often tested by hardships, but sometimes it breaks exactly when you need support the most. In those moments, you realize that your definitions of loyalty and mutual respect can be fundamentally different. Story 25. We worked together at a job for 10 years, became practically brother and sister. One day I got a new job and she followed. Well, she got her sister a job at the same place, working in the same department as me. While my friend worked in a different one, she gradually and openly became jealous of the fact that we were being friendly and believed I was trying to replace her as a friend with her sister, which couldn't have been further from the truth. I tried like hell to patch things up, but she didn't want to hear it. And before anyone says, oh, she wanted to sleep with you, and vice versa, we both have long been happily married to other people. I can't speak for her, but I have not once had a single thought of wanting to. Answer, often from my experience, people don't want to see you happy when they're not the one giving you that reaction. These people are the ones I avoid because I'm not here to please others that don't know how to separate the reality that they're not the only one that can bring good vibes into someone else's life. Plus, why not just assimilate and blend in with the group to increase the level of happiness versus isolating or making things awkward? It makes no sense to me. Story 26 literally ended because I reposted the video of Alex Pretty reading over the vet on my F-book page saying, this is the man who was taken down today. We've been friends for 32 years since we were in kindergarten. Our political views don't always align, but we usually can have healthy debates about it, agree to disagree. Not this time. Apparently, by posting that vid with that caption, I was pushing rhetoric by posting that video of the agitator. Story 27. His wife helped my ex-wife hide her 6-month affair. He claims to have had suspicions, but no concrete evidence. I called bullshit on it and cut them off completely. Story 28. He got a kid. It was fine when she was a baby. I'd see him and his wife almost every week when we hung out. We put an effort to see each other on a weekly basis. I was his best man at his wedding and everything. We lived in the same street for a while, but then I broke up with my then girlfriend. He helped me move and everything. I traveled a bit more, but still tried to keep in touch and see them whenever I was in the country. But it was always just him at that point, never his wife or the kid. The last time I've seen him in person was over a year ago. I haven't seen his wife in forever, and his kid once since the wedding, which was over 4 years ago. This guy was my best friend for over 20 years, and the moment he got a child, that all changed. I have tried talking to him, but it's not that, I'm just busy. But I find it extremely strange that since a bit after the kid was born, everything changed. I pretend no longer to care that I lost this friendship, but it's a lie I need to tell myself in order not to feel too hurt. It did bring me closer to another friend, so that's nice. Story 29. My best friend and I met in first grade in 1960. She passed away in 2012. Still miss our friendship to this day. Story 30. Starting HRT, he was fine with me cross-dressing, but once I started meds, he became really distant. Sucks. That was my brother FR. Story 31. Sadly, I watched him devolve into a bootlicking cultist who saw me, a centrist Republican, as his enemy. Haven't spoken in almost a year. Story 32. When I realized we were only friends out of habit, not because we actually cared about each other anymore. Story 33. Would bully me to my face and make fun of me for years. When I finally called her out on it, she had the nerve to call me a meanie and said everyone didn't like me. Slept with her ex-boyfriend and moved on. She apologized for everything 6 years later. I'm guessing to clear her conscience. Story 34. He revealed his long-standing unrequited love for me. He was like my brother. I don't want a brother that pretends to be my friend for over 10 years because he wants to fudge me. Story 35. Me. I got mentally unwell in the worst way, fixated on a different person, and let the person who mattered most to me drift. We still talk, we're still friends, but it's not like it was. And it's one of my biggest regrets. It wasn't deliberate. I really lost touch with reality. But if I could do anything over again, it'd be that. Hopefully we'll find each other again in another lifetime, and I'll do it right then. With others, passing and natural drift. I'm old enough, though, that a lot of us have drifted back together. Social media is good for some things. It's painful to realize you were just a temporary companion in someone's life, as long as it was convenient for them. When all the effort to stay connected comes from only one side, the end of the relationship is just a matter of time. Story 36. Kids, it's like once you decide you don't want kids, everyone who has them cuts you off. A lot of people don't understand my decision, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't love their kids any less. Story 37. The current administration, we've been friends for 20 years. Regardless, I cannot be friends with someone who is okay with the atrocities that were happening and are continuing to happen. I have zero regrets. Story 38. Me and my best friend are friends to this day. We grew up together and we've had a couple falling outs, but we always work our way back to being friends. All it takes is one phone call or text to rekindle a relationship. That being said, one of my good friends I made as an adult, I had a falling out with about a year ago. I felt left out of something that she did, and she got really mad and defensive out when I told her how I felt about it. I kind of just stopped talking to her after that. Oh well, maybe she will try to reach out again one day. In my experience, a lot of friendships fail due mostly to miscommunication and pride. Story 39. Grew up across the street from each other and was tight from middle school all the way up until our mid-20s. He tried getting with my girlfriend at the time when me and her were having issues. I went his place to vent about things and I didn't realize it at the time, but he was texting her while I was there. I guess since he was so terrible with women, he thought it would be easy. He was sending her things like how she should leave me for him and saying he had a crush on her. Real cringy stuff. I obviously found out because she showed me the messages. I confronted him the next day and he ran inside like a coward and threatened to call the cops. All that could have possibly been forgiven with time, but a year later he was arrested for being involved with a girl that was only in 9th grade while he was 27. It also came out that he would try to befriend teenagers by offering to buy them beer and stuff. He's 31 now and still lives across the street from my parents with his folks. There are times I wonder how he's doing, but then remember he's a creep. It's so weird though, I sometimes think of fun times, but I will never speak to him again. Story 40. I just got tired of being a mental punching bag. If anything bad happened, I was the outlet for being put down. We have been off and on friends since junior high, and it seemed to be a pattern. I basically ghosted him. My wife and I are just waiting for the day he shows up at my door asking for forgiveness again. Story 41. I wish I knew early on in life that good people can sometimes really change for the worse. A distant family member passed and left my best friend literally millions of dollars. When I got sick and went through chemo and several surgeries, I never got asked how I was doing. I sure received quite a few photos of all his new toys, boats, trucks, etc. One of the first things he did was to kick his special needs brother out of one of his houses because he didn't like that he wasn't maintaining it to his standards. His brother is now homeless and has been living on the streets for some time. He has absolutely no empathy for anyone doing worse financially than him. He also turned into the biggest Trump supporters I may have ever met. Trump can do no wrong in his eyes. It became his entire personality. People being attacked by ICE, well, they deserve it. No thanks, I'm out. Story 42. He decided being racist was more important than being my friend. Good riddance. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any friends left. Story 43. I supported her through many challenges. When I needed support, she was nowhere to be found. When I started to think about the friendship, I realized it was one-sided. It's not that she never supported, but she only supported when it suited her. I also realized patterns of manufactured drama that never needed to happen. It was too exhausting to continue. Answer: heavy on the unnecessary drama. We were both in our early 30s by the time I got sick of it and distanced myself. Just answering her phone calls was exhausting, and I no longer wanted to be around her. Unfortunately, she lost her battle with breast cancer last year, after we had been no contact for almost 2 years. I do have guilt and regrets, but I know our friendship ended for a reason. Story 44. We grew up together and have been friends for 15 years. I wanted to organize a phone call to catch up, and he missed 6 phone calls in a row. Each time was the same excuse that it slipped his mind, or he forgot, or he was napping. I told him it wasn't acceptable, and if he wanted to talk, he was going to have to make the effort to organize a phone call or anything. It's been 6 months and I haven't heard a single thing from him, and it breaks my heart and I miss him lots, but hey, nothing I can do. I showed up and he didn't. Story 45. I had to testify and I didn't lie. He went to prison for some time and I just couldn't handle the crap that was going on. Story 46. She was a huge conspiracy theorist that started saying some wildly egregious and ignorant things that I could not ignore. Story 47. Passing. He went on a camping trip with his 2 younger siblings and a couple of friends. He got away from the group, and the dumbass went freediving in some underwater caverns at midnight. Predictably, the idiot drowned. I was supposed to go on the trip with him, but canceled at the last minute because I just didn't feel like going. His family and his dad especially have always blamed me for his passing. They thought I'd have stopped him from doing such idiocy had I been with him. My second best friend and I had a falling out over him doing some shady stuff with a design agency we owned back in the day. He actually did half-heartedly apologize sometime later, but trust was never the same, and I lost interest and moved on. Story 48. Religion and hypocrisy. Rules for thee and not for me. She turned pro-life because of religion, had an abortion in the past, started posting about being pro-life, and then had another abortion due to financial and marital problems. Then continued straight into posting pro-life shoot. I fully agree with the abortions. Cannot wrap my head around the mental gymnastics needed on her end. Story 49. My closest friend became a huge narcissist. We both grew up a little poor, but he always cared way too much about what others thought of him. He had kept making backhanded comments about me having the same friends from high school or not blowing money on flashy cars and clothes like him. I hope he's happy with the life he chose. It just seems like a miserable existence to put so much effort so others think you're cool. Story 50. They decided to go nuclear when I didn't mail a package for them. ASAP. This is while I'm dealing with a newborn and preschooler. Time is a luxury. Then once I was able to send it, they played the victim card and pretty much said it was my fault. Dropped them completely. Story 51. She cheated on her husband while we were on vacation together and left me alone in a strange city to go with some man. 20-year friendship, and I couldn't get past it, let alone look her husband in the face. Story 52. I was going through some stuff, so I stopped talking and kind of disappeared for a bit, which I guess is unforgivable. Answered, I've done that to a few people who weren't being supportive. When I was going through stuff, they made it about themselves. I don't feel bad about it. For one of them, my dad died and I went silent for like 5 days. Then all I got as a text was, And when I explained there was a passing in my family, she said, "Oh, I'm so relieved. I thought you were mad at me. I was so anxious," etc. I never really spoke to her again. Story 53. She passed away from colon cancer. It wasn't caught until she fell and broke her hip. They found out that it had spread into her pelvis. She was 82, and we'd been friends for almost 25 years. Answer: I'm really so sorry for your loss. I just lost my dad to cancer a couple months ago, and it's terrible watching that happen. That said, I just want to say that I'm currently 38 years old. I have been going through big life changes, like moving 3 hours from my hometown for a new job and finally settling down with a house. But I've been really struggling because it's been so hard to make new friends here, while at the same time my other friends, because of distance, are becoming less present in my life. It makes me relieved to know it's never too late to make new friends, and that there is still time to meet someone that I can have a 25-year-long friendship with. Thank you giving me a little light in these dark times. Story 54. I didn't give her enough emotional support during the pandemic. While she was at home with her kid in the burbs and I was working full-time in a hospital, living in the epicenter of the uprising, she's the one who cut me off, lol. Story 55. My older brother died rather unexpectedly. Didn't come to the funeral, didn't stop by and say sorry. We lived about a 10-minute walk away. Not even a phone call. He knew my parents really well. We had been friends since elementary, middle school. Did send me a text, though. Really opened my eyes to what a truly piece of shoot friend he was. Story 56. I don't know for sure what caused her to stop sending in Christmas cards or to stop answering my calls and texts, but I know that the timing coincides with when I got divorced. She's a very devout Catholic, so I think she didn't approve of my life choices. Story 57. Friend A, MAGA, in the Grand Canyon-wide ensuing gulf in values. He was one of the last people I ever saw coming with that bullshit. Friend B, mental illness tanked after his mother's passing. Fell into adult beverage, harmful behavior, agoraphobia, and lack of effort in maintaining relationships and life in general. Tried for 15-ish years to maintain the friendship with no effort from him before I had to move on. Story 58. She had my ex move in with her and her husband and decided his friendship was worth more than mine. She just stopped answering my calls and texts. I saw her a few years ago in my hometown, and she didn't recognize me, though I recognized her. It hurts, but you can't force people to like you. Story 59. I won't say ended, but we have definitely gone from brothers to just acquaintances. It started with just distance. We were work friends, and our building closed down and we went work from home. About 6 months before that, he moved to the middle of nowhere, a good hour and 20-minute drive away. We didn't see each other as much for sure, but we kept in touch. Then everything changed. He was a good friend to me, but a terrible partner to his child's mother. She got fed up and left, taking the kid and filing an EPO against him as a parting shot. I missed a lot of work and practically lived at his house, getting him through that first month. I found the lawyer that got him out of the EPO, got him primary custody, etc. Got it all sorted out, but I noticed more and more that I only heard from him when the world was ending, which was semi-frequent as he suffers from anxiety. During this time, I also went through a lot. My alcoholic dad had a stroke, which kicked off dementia and a world of problems. A lot of drama there, but like at the worst of it, I got to fist fight my dad to get a gun away from him while I screamed at 911 on speakerphone. I didn't hear much out of my buddy, but if he did hit me up to ask how things were going, I'd share maybe 2 sentences of what I'd been going through, and then it was radio silence. Pretty clear that he had reached out to vent, and when my problems proved bigger, he just slipped out of the conversation. Then came the religion. Got himself into a backwater church in his rural town. Never once has read the Bible, and didn't much care for my suggestion that he do so. From what I gather on Facebook, religion means you talk to God when you're having anxiety, and local church folk give you free stuff. I have recently started hearing from him again, because after 2 years of being single, he started sleeping around in his town, and he can't brag about that to his church friends. I shared a few choice scriptures on the topic of dating and marriage, and questioned his choice of fudge buddies. His current primary one is his ex-husband's ex. The last time those two interacted, it came down to gunplay and felony charges. So yeah, long story short, I realized that I was always just someone you know you can rely on when the world ends. There wasn't much reciprocation, and when you're finally stable enough to start making terrible life choices again, your friend, who always preaches logic and doing the right thing, becomes someone you don't want to talk to. Sometimes we forgive those close to us too much, hoping for their honesty or change. But it's important to know when to draw the line when someone's behavior starts to systematically damage your inner peace and trust. Story 60, Trump, wasn't a big blow-up or anything. As he went further and further towards that world, I moved further and further the other way. Story old as 2015. Story 61, realized he was constantly disrespectful and gossiping about everyone. He admitted he'd already cheated on his fiancée of 10 years and later tried to do it again with friends, though one friend straight up refused. That, along with other things, made me realize I couldn't stay friends with him. Blocked him everywhere. Story 62. We had been good friends since third grade. At about 28 years old, his favorite baseball team made it to the World Series for the first time since he could remember. I was making pretty good money at the time and offered to help get him to at least one game, and I was met with, "Oh, you think you're some kind of baller now?" I'm not looking for charity, never spoke to him again. Story 63. A lack of communication with one another. Here is what it boils down to. If you have a friend that does something to make you feel negative, angry, hurt, offended, you need to tell them. Don't vague post about it. Don't go run and tell someone else. Don't hold it in and hope it goes away. Tell them. Story 64. Politics. He can't get past the fact that I don't like Trump. He said, if you are not pro-Trump, we can't be friends. So I said, well, if I knew it was just that simple. See ya. Story 65. After 60 years of friendship, Trumpism was the end for it. He went to the dark side and he claims he's a good Catholic. Story 66. I realized he wasn't an enjoyable person to be around. He was argumentative about everything, loud, judgmental, and when you pushed back even a little, he would claim he was dealing with bad mental health and make you feel bad. During COVID, we stopped talking and I never went back. Story 67. Best friend from high school and a girl I was friends with got married. I spent weeks convincing her to give him a chance, and a year after graduation, they got married. I found out about the wedding because I happened to be in a gas station and saw two of our mutual friends in tuxedos, and they confused asked me why I wasn't in one because the wedding was in 2 hours. I wasn't invited. I got a text from my supposed friend saying sorry and I should come to their wedding anyway. Instead of showing up to their wedding in camo shorts and a tank top, I just took the hint. He wasn't my friend because he liked me. He was my friend because we lived close enough to ride the bus drive each other to school. Once we weren't obligated to be in the same circle 5 days a week, we weren't friends. They had 3 kids and got divorced. Love that for them. Answer: he wasn't my friend because he liked me. He was my friend because we lived close enough to ride the bus drive each other to school. Once we weren't obligated to be in the same circle 5 days a week, we weren't friends. I mentioned it elsewhere in the thread, but these friendships of convenience are an absolute meanie once you figure them out for yourself. Sucks you had to go through that, bud. Go. Story 68. Happened a couple weeks ago. We were having dinner at a restaurant. I wanted to eat a good meal, so I'd sleep well for an event that I was eagerly anticipating and spent a bunch of money on. So I invited her to a sushi place. We get there, it's crowded, we're not getting attention. She orders for me, something I can't eat. Then she calls the waiter and talks over me when I'm trying to order. I tell her not to talk over me, and she freaks out and starts trauma dumping. Tells me I had the same mean tone as her harmful behavior mom when I was telling her not to talk over me. Causes a scene in the restaurant, throws money at me, runs away. I was too rattled to sleep well, went to the event exhausted, and while I had a good time anyway, when I got back, I unfriended her. We'd been friends and coworkers for about a decade. I just can't deal with drama bombs. Story 69. He moved on in his career much faster than I did. Not that it's always about money, and I do fine, but whereas I just recently started making big money in my 30s, he had been doing since his mid-20s. We stayed friends, I'd say, but he also came out and then started dating an older man and just sort of stopped replying to me to do any of the things we used to do. We used to hang out probably every 2 to 4 months, but would chat here and there. I get it, people get busy, but after our last hangout, which was fine, I never saw him again. Been a little over a year. Our parents are still friends, but honestly, I was pretty hurt. No real reason was given, and he still goes to the same places and does the same stuff we used to, just him never invited. So basically, I shifted to just thinking he's a jerk. It definitely bummed me out at first, but when I confronted him about 8 to 9 months of no replying and what his deal was, and once again got no reply, I gave up. Story 70. He became a magot. I can't figure why an intelligent college grad would succumb to a degenerate liar's bullshit. Also can't figure why his ultra-feminist wife tolerates his misogynistic and racist crap. It is all very sad. Story 71. I was just into our friendship more than she was, I guess. It ended when I saw her slightly cringe when I referred to her as my best friend since I was 5 in front of a group of people. It stung, like a lot. But on to a different season, or some shoot like that. Story 72. A couple things. Didn't reach out and try to date an ex behind my back. I actually didn't mind if he tried to date her. It's the not telling me thing that made me mad. Story 73. Don't work for your friends. They'll use friendship to push you to do more things for free. True with relationships too. Story 74. He became narcissistic and got angry with anyone who wouldn't join his pity party. He burned bridges in his own family. Story 75. Sadly, she went down the rabbit hole with a certain clown in power in 2020, and she knew I wouldn't follow. She stopped all communication after 40 years. There was no conversation, just quiet quitting. It was shocking because she was such a good person. I can't imagine what happened to her brain, her faith, or her family. Story 76. 13 years. No effort on her part to reach out ever. Anytime we talk, it's because I initiate it. I just stopped trying. Story 77. When my dog died and they never even bothered to ask how I was doing when they spoke to me a few days after. I realized my life means nothing to them. Why waste the energy on those kinds of relationships? Story 78. Her husband and his MAGA shoot. She's turned into a robot. He's also convinced her that the rapture is coming any day. So they literally tell each other every morning as they leave for work that this is the last time they'll see each other. I miss my friend, but you can't fight crazy. Story 79. 30-year friendship. No real attempt to get together. When we did, it was always on her terms. Calling to check in, but didn't really listen. Canceled many plans last minute. Always very late to events, frustrating everyone. Waiting to see what all the cool options were before committing to plans. Just a 50-year-old person who took me for granted and also stayed immature about some things. Don't miss them at all. Story 80. Lack of effort on their part and peer pressure. My best friend was pretty popular, and a lot of her other friends told her I was a freak. It didn't take long for me to be the one to initiate hangouts and be the one to do whatever she wanted as long as we got to be friends. The final nail in the coffin was when we had a sleepover at her house. I was about 16, and she spent the entire time watching movies with her mom in the master bedroom. I was willing to do anything for someone I thought of as family, only to realize I was nothing more than an annoyance. We were friends for 12 years. Story 81. Well, maybe Greenland wants to be invaded. And just like that, we'll never be as close as we used to be. I will always look sideways at everything that comes out of their mouth. Friends for 40 years. Story 82. Partner was a narcissistic only child and a trust fund child. Toxic as a super fun site. Over the decades, the narcissism ate my friend's personality, and they turned into an harmful behavior. Raging attack dog, harmful behavior, waiters, service staff, and anyone else who displeased the spouse, who was also harmful behavior. It was bad enough that we had only cursory contact as it continued through the years. Then they moved to town. One can only take so much. Story 83. We were friends from high school and had different morals and values. She was really flaky and would never apologize about it. Ultimately, she just didn't really. Story 84. We're still friends at the moment, but thanks to Charlie Kirk's passing, I learned that he's taken a rightward political swing. It's hard to be friends with anyone on the right in the current political climate, so I don't know if things will last. Story 85. Drank the Kool-Aid. Every conversation contained you have to agree that, and it's a fact that, intermixed with propagable, and I was backed into a corner of justifying every line item of my existence and belief system, which he would promptly dismiss and invalidate. It was exhausting. His opinion is the only opinion. So we spoke less. Then see Kirk happen, and he leaned harder into everything on that side of things. And we are done. Story 86. A lot of stuff happened before this one particular action. We had been talking and hanging out far less, but we were at an authentic pizza place, which to him was not actual North American pizza, so he was complaining. He's a very picky eater, but in the pizza and chicken fingers only kind of way. The waiter was doing her best to remain polite with his ridiculous complaint. It wasn't her fault that he saw pizza on the sign and thought it would be what he liked. She thought the complaint was over, or she just wanted to stop listening to him, so she turned away from him and he slammed his plate on the table loudly, saying fudge meanie. I wasn't choosing to be there with him. It was a birthday party for a mutual of ours. This was definitely the definitive action that allowed me to really let go and move on. Answer. That's something that happens to a lot of people when they hit their 30s in particular. You just stop hanging out with people that refuse to grow up and act their age, not their shoe size. Like I turned 40 last year, and already me and my brother, 2 years younger than me, kind of are already excluding people from our respective social circles that still act like they are 19 or younger. We're not doing it to be mean. Everyone else in our respective group feel the same way, and we've given them chances, but they just refuse to change. Life paths and priorities often diverge, and that's a natural part of growing up. However, it's always a bit sad to see years of shared memories lose out to new beliefs or simple indifference. Story 87. Slowly coming to the realization that they'd been radicalized by the far-right wing belief system. I just won't associate with anybody so full of hatred. Had a good 30 years anyway, or so I thought. Story 88. They became a major prescription, substance harmful behavior, benzos. And when I expressed concern, pointed out our text messages to prove it, I was met with hostility. We take the same script, mind you, and every single time I'd invite them to do something, I was met with, well, I'm low on meds, or I can't pick up my meds until enter day, so you'll have to give me some of yours. I felt like I was being constantly manipulated to give up my own medication because I never overtake and have some extra. Coming out of a controlling relationship, I refuse to be manipulated. If you can't confront your friend of 30 years with concern about their behavior, they were never really a friend to begin with. Answer, I have a similar situation. Best friend's wife did a lot of coke. She borrowed a ton of money from me while I was pregnant. Never paid it back. I let it slide. Not worth losing my best friend because his wife has a habit. Few years later, I got injured and was on pain meds. She too was on the same meds. She constantly judged me for it. For the same meds she was taking, I let it slide. Her husband was like a brother to me. She commissioned a painting from me, and when I gave it to her, she said she would pay me the next day. Then all of a sudden, he, her husband, my best friend, refused to talk to me afterwards. A few months of not talking, I finally was able to talk to him, to tell him my dad, who was like a father to him, was dying. He coldly said, "Okay, is that it?" Broke my heart. I gave so much to him and his family and was treated like I didn't matter the one time I needed my friend. I don't know to this day what happened. My only guess is maybe his wife did something to turn him against me. Story 89. Nearly died. Spent 3 weeks in a coma. Took a month just to be able to have the strength to walk again. Never heard from him once. Story 90. She eliminated herself. However, she was a big believer in the afterlife, and we always promised to haunt each other if one of us died. She willed part of her ashes to me, and they sit on a Ouija board. I check the planchette every so often to see if it's moved. It hasn't, but we've lost touch before and still came back together eventually. Story 91. M70. My former best friend and I met in kindergarten and were friends ever since. We are polar opposites politically, but that was never an issue until 2020, when she told me if I didn't support Trump, we could no longer be friends. That was never going to happen. So I suggested we continue our nearly lifelong friendship without discussing politics. She refused. Broke my heart, but it's her loss. Story 92. I had a friend that I had met in college where we were roommates for a couple semesters. We also shared an apartment for a year after college while we were getting our careers started. We even worked at the same company for a half dozen years. During that time, he got into a really bad crowd and was dating a stripper who was married and on substances. One day he came to me and asked if I thought it would be okay if he hired someone to eliminate the stripper's husband so that he could have her all to himself. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I can't talk to you anymore and want nothing to do with this." After that, I cut off all contact with him for several years. As far as I know, nothing criminal happened, and he ended up moving away to another part of the country. Later on, we reconnected for a while after he straightened his life up and married a nice woman. However, when they came to visit my wife and I for a week, he was just an absolute jerk to his wife, constantly berating her. After they left, my wife said, "I never want to see that guy again." And I agreed. For a few more years, he kept calling me and emailing me frequently, but I just never replied. My last few interactions were very troubling. First, he sent me a message saying he was about to get rich off of an investment, and he thought I'd be stupid if I didn't go in on it with him. I Googled the investment and got a page full of links showing that it was a scam. Then on Facebook, he began posting all kinds of weird conspiracy theories. Flat Earth, the moon landing is fake, QAnon, all that kind of stuff. I have a relative that is a former astronaut who my friend had met, so I mentioned that to him in a reply about space not being real. However, his response was that my relative had been drugged and brainwashed and didn't actually go to space. Anyway, to make a long story short, I decided that this person was not worth knowing anymore and haven't heard from them in about 5 years. No need for a reconciliation. Story 93. Lots of small things that added up to me realizing she did not give a single shoot about me. One of them, I broke my leg when I was home alone and called her to ask her to take me to the hospital. She was busy shopping, so I took an Uber. Over the next 3 months, I had surgery, was confined to a wheelchair, and ended up having to stay at my harmful behavior ex-boyfriend's house because he was the only person willing to help me. She never visited me once, even though my ex-house was about 3 minutes away from her work. She never offered to help me with my dog, which was a huge issue while I was recovering. Several months later, after I was back on 2 feet, we went to a comedy show. I paid for the tickets, drove us, paid for parking and a hotel. And before we went to our seats, she had to go to the bathroom and asked me to go get 2 drinks for her. I was 6 months sober at the time and was really uncomfortable being around a bar, let alone buying drinks. But I agreed. I had to walk down, then back up super sketchy, steep stairs with 2 full glasses of wine. I hadn't graduated to stairs and physical therapy yet. It was honestly terrifying. She got partied too hard and complained the whole time, then fell asleep 2 seconds after we got back to the hotel. The next day after we were back home, she sent me a Venmo request for $17 for the chicken satay appetizer she bought me. I sent her back a Venmo request for half of the parking cost, which I never had any intention of. It's insane for us to be nickel and diming each other. We didn't talk for a few days until she called me and screamed at me for being a shoot friend, and I hung up on her. I don't let people scream at me, and she knows this. We haven't talked since. I miss her a lot, but then I remember all this and realize I'm not missing out on much. Story 94. I've had 3 great friends in my life, and although none of them are in my life, I still cherish the time we were friends. If they needed anything and asked, I'd still show up. Passing, becoming different people, politically and recreationally. Being a jerk and not being able to act properly in public. Story 95. I came home after living in another state for a year, and she was pregnant, but wasn't sure if my kid's dad was the father or not. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. Story 96. My best friend of 20 years was dating a girl who had a daughter the same age as us, too. The daughters became best friends. When he broke up with the girl he was dating, I was upfront with him and said that the girls will still see each other. He didn't like this, and we haven't spoken since. Story 97. Friend of 30 years. He became MAGA, voted for his first time ever at 48 years old, and couldn't be friends with someone who wasn't a Trump supporter. Story 98. I moved halfway across the country to escape the wreckage of my present. He carried on with his life, and I struggled through mine. No anger, no animosity, just geography. I'm happy to say that when I returned to visit the old hometown after a decade, it was like no time had passed. When he stepped away to the washroom, his wife even told me that he was so very happy to see me. So although we have time and distance between us, I still count him as one of my closest friends. Story 99. I am still friends with my oldest friend of like 55 years, but we rarely see each other because we live on other sides of the country. My other oldest friend died. Story 100. Alcoholism. He was a great friend when he was sober, but was awful when he was tipsy. Eventually, he was tipsy more than sober. My party days were waning, and so did our friendship. He never wronged me personally, but I was about the only one. Story 101. She was becoming extremely controlling. She would track my location, try to find me on outings with my boyfriend, would comment on where I am. She accused my boyfriend of using my phone to message her when I told her I needed space and didn't feel like messaging. She never approved of my boyfriend, and looking back, she 100 thought she had some sort of stake claim over me going back to high school when she had a crush on me. I'm straight and made it clear I was never interested in her that way. She alienated me from many friend groups and generally just caused strife in my day-to-day. If I was manic, she would lean into it and encourage me to act on impulses, spending more than I could afford, bring home animals I couldn't feasibly care for. I've never been happier since I blocked all communications from her. Story 102. She made fun of me a lot and made fun of my friends until I realized friends don't do that, and I cut her off. Story 103. She married a Mormon that didn't want her to be hanging around me, an atheist female that drank and swore. She also started speaking like him and changed so much that she wasn't the woman I grew up with anymore. Her desperation to marry and have kids was foreign to me. Story 104. She made so many excuses about why she couldn't attend my wedding and seemed like she was trying to upset me at my actual wedding. First, about 9 months out, it was intriguing to save up credit card points to attend, but you'll see. This was after a 6-week trip to Europe she took with her then boyfriend. Then the week before, she said she didn't know if she could attend because her dad needed eye surgery on his cataracts. I was as nice as I could about it, including not saying to her that I had written her off as not attending months earlier. A couple of days before the wedding, she sent me flight info that I later found out was fake. I didn't have time to deal with it because of my wedding logistics already being with family friends, so I just thumbs up the message and moved about my day. I then got a message the same day saying she same day canceled the flight because I didn't seem excited that she was now attending, and she had saved up all this money to come and I wasn't grateful. I was so confused by the whole thing and just felt like she was trying to pull focus. I never talked to her again because it all felt slimy and disingenuous. A simple "I can't make it to your wedding, but would love to celebrate at a later date with you" would have sufficed. The theatrics weren't necessary. Story 105. He's a super duper religious person, whatever, you do you, and then he started sending all of these God chose Trump emails. Noped out of the friendship and have since blocked him when he continued sending his propaganda even after I asked him to stop. Story 106. Sold my best friend a car. She gave me 150.00 PMT, then ghosted me. I spoke with her parents and found out they gave her the 50.00, and she parked the car in their yard for sale and sold it for more than I charged her. Never got another penny from her. We were both single moms. Answer: moral of the story, bill of sale only after full payment or file a lien, so that if she sold the car and on non-payment, you have more legal grounds to get your value back. In most areas, if a lien is on a vehicle, the registration is not possible on owner transfer. People will see the lien on the vehicle's report. I'm sure you know this now, more so posting for people in a similar situation. Story 107. She is very controlling. I started setting boundaries and stopped people-pleasing. It didn't go well. Story 108. I grew up to be gay, and she grew up to be homophobic. Pretty ironic because she makes a living acting in lesbian adult content. Story 109. Are these questions posted by bots to collect responses that feed LLMs? Why have there been so many of these types of personal and open-ended questions over the past year? Story 110. I kept growing up and developing ever higher standards for what I expect out of people, ethically and morally. She didn't. Eventually, I realized how much of a piece of trash she was and didn't want to have that in my life anymore. Story 111. She can't have children. I don't want children. And she took it as a slap in the face, even though she knew I don't them, since before she found out she can't have them. She'd verbally attack me every chance she got, and although I wanted to be there for her, I recognized I had to distance myself from her for both our mental health. I'd known her since we were literally babies. Our parents are friends from before we were born. The kicker? I also can't have kids because there is a very high chance that pregnancy would eliminate me before the baby was even able to live on its own. Like doctors have told me that if I fell pregnant, my options are essentially terminate or die. She knows all this and still disliked me for not being willing to risk my life. I left that friendship nearly 10 years ago, but I'm still in contact with her younger brother, and he's told me she still disliked me and will rant about how I am so horrible for not being willing to die for a hypothetical child I don't even want. Story 112. Transphobia and peddling right-wing rhetoric. 35 years of friendship gone in the course of a few Facebook posts. Tried to discuss it, got shut down. Story 113. My friends and I all have different social and political opinions, but we keep it cordial on the occasion it comes up. Not this one friend. He became engrossed in the MAGA movement, like my own personal Ted Nugent character. He bought into all the stolen election shoot during the Biden years, and if you contradicted him with facts, he went off all angry. He eventually excommunicated himself from the group. Can't imagine what he's like now. Last I saw him was during the election. Story 114. Constant attention-seeking behavior, positive or negative, and emotional harmful behavior in the form of constantly threatening to end their lives and expecting friends to step in and save them. Story 115. Mental health issues. He was a bit odd when we were teenagers then. As an adult, he got really erratic. I tried to be there, but he drifted off. The last straw was when he posted some shoot on FB about me and my new wife for no reason. Story 116. Kanan. He came back around eventually after severing ties with nearly all his friends and family over various grievances when people pushed back on his indoctrination. but we haven't actually talked much since. Story 117. We were best friends like sisters. I realized I was making all of the effort in the friendship and that she also didn't care when I was going through a hard time. I talked to her about it a number of times, and she basically said that it's just how I am. I don't make effort. My other friends always do, and I decided to stop calling, stop texting, and nothing from her. 7 years of friendship down the drain. Story 118. I learned they were only nice to me out of pity, so I stopped texting first and never heard from them again. It's been almost 8 years. Story 119. From best friends that people always joked were secretly a couple, to zero. People change as time passes, but his change was not an improvement. He went from a fun and caring, thoughtful guy to an absolutely entitled, self-centered jerk. The type that buys friends and acquaintances gifts, but not because of the joy of giving. To be seen doing it, like IRL karma farming. Purposely would do things to annoy me. It's fun to make you mad, and not just once in a while as a joke, purposely all the time. Talk shoot behind my back. So, threw him out during a fight. Who took him in? Me, while his old apartment he was moving out of had a bedbug problem. Risked bedbugs for the guy. Let him cry on my shoulder and help their relationship along. On vacation and needed a PCR test to fly home. COVID years. All of ours came back. His results did not. He blew all his money while there, and I offered him my credit card to stay at a hotel and get a new test as he needed. He was angry with me about that. How? Couldn't tell you. I was going through a very tough time, depressed, dealing with a single-parent substance addiction and unemployment alone. And when I needed someone to talk to, I was turned away because I don't know how to help, and it's depressing. So if you could stop talking about it to me was what I got. 2 years of delayed and canceled plans. I just called it quits. Blocked and ghosted everywhere. Much happier that he's out of my life. Story 120. His inner MAGA showed up loud and present. It was unbearable. We've been best friends since high school. Story 121. Distance. He moved to the West Coast for college and stayed. We would make a point to keep in touch and hang out when he came home for the holidays. I went to college in the same state, but 2 hours away. I last spoke to him in 2013 when I was out there on a trip. Ultimately, he began associating his home with conservative politics, which is true. It's a red state. So because I remained here, I automatically got associated with that in his mind, and he cut ties. While the state is red, the city we grew up in is very blue, and so were our parents. I'm not sure at what point he decided to forget that, but it sucks. We were close and grew up next door from one another since age 3. He's doing well for himself, though, and has a growing family. I am happy for him. Story 122. Hello there. Just the passage of time and changing family dynamics. My friends all married, had children, and eventually grandchildren, and my being single just stopped meshing with their lives. Plus issues on my own end. I miss them terribly and don't make friends easily, so I'm basically a recluse now. Story 123. They were coming to town and we had plans to go for dinner. We had been discussing for months. They changed plans on me times on me without asking to make plans with other people. I got demoted to a lunch and I told them that made me unhappy as we were supposed to hang out for the evening and I hadn't seen them in years and they unfriended me. 15-year friendship. Story 124. When she showed no empathy for the U.S. federal government employees summarily who lost their jobs due to Doge, she coldly agreed with her husband that Fed employees were all overpaid and lazy who deserved to be fired for the sole reason of someone's uneducated whim. Private sector people lose their jobs all the time. They just get another one. She shrugged. This was the culmination of many remarks from her that were shockingly ill-informed and willfully obtuse. I guess I just hit my limit this time. I took her remarks personally as my daughter is partially disabled due to her 10 years in the military and has been working in a high-level, extremely stressful political government job for 15 years. Irregardless of whether she intended to include my daughter in her overarching summation, what I heard was that my daughter who worked her butt off to get where she is and my just graduated grandson who was just beginning his career deserved to suffer. Mama Bear threw money on the restaurant table, walked out, and hasn't spoken to her since. Story 125. Him and a couple of other friends I'd been tight with since the mid-'80s went full MAGA. What's bizarre is how utterly stupid they all became regarding basically any topic where we used to be able to relate: music, art, women, motorcycles, partying, food, you name it. The MAGA bullshit is a fudge brain cancer, I swear to God. Story 126. Toxic AF and always played victim when When called out for his BS, he lacked accountability for any of his actions and would only feign apologies when it benefited him. Proven by his actions, behavior's not changing. TBH, good riddance. And I know almost a dozen people who would say the same about him.